When US President Donald Trump ran for a second term in office back in 2024, inflation was one of the main issues he focused on during his campaign to return to the White House.
So tonight, I make this pledge to the great people of America. I will end the devastating inflation crisis immediately, bring down interest rates, and lower the cost of energy. Under my plan, incomes will skyrocket, inflation will vanish completely, jobs will come roaring back, and the middle class will prosper like never, ever before, and we're going to do it very rapidly.
Well, last year, and just months into his second presidency, Trump declared that inflation was no longer an issue in the United States.
We have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. You know, if you look at the numbers are incredible, actually.
All right, so where are we now? The United States Labor Department reported on Wednesday that US inflation has climbed to 4.2%. That's the highest since 2023, when President Joe Biden was in office. Now, the graph you can see on your screen shows inflation rates in the US over the last 10 years. Now, it reached its highest level in 2022. That was when it reached more than 9%. Back then, the reasons were connected to the COVID-19 pandemic and the global energy shock brought about by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So, what's driving up the prices now, and is it a big problem for Trump and the US economy? Those are questions I want to discuss with my guest, Allie Kelly. Hi, Allie. She covers housing and affordability in America's biggest cities at the global news website Business Insider. Great to have you on DW News. Let's start with the big picture. What's actually fueling this latest jump in inflation to 4.2%?
Right. As you mentioned, we are in a situation where have been a series of shocks to the economy in recent years. We had the pandemic, we had various geopolitical conflicts that the U.S. was involved in, and then we've also had kind of flip-flopping tariff policy and trade policy out of the White House. And all of those things, when they happen, are shocking the economy, shocking consumers, and having this sustained impact on inflation that causes it to rise and makes it that much harder to bring back down.
All right, well, let's just kind of break down some of what you said there. How much of this spike, though, is really down to oil and global conflicts?
Right. So the fact that inflation reached its highest level since 2023, a lot of that does have to do with oil prices surging due to conflict in the Middle East. One of the things that we are seeing, though, is that it was already above the Federal Reserve's 2.2% goal. We have had stubborn inflation in recent years, and this fact that it keeps rising higher is not solely an oil-related problem, but unless those oil prices are able to come down soon, I think that we will continue to see inflation be as high as it is, if not higher.
Right. Now, for ordinary Americans, where are they feeling this most right now? Is it still fuel? Is it groceries? Is it rent? Is it a combination of everything, or is it something else?
Right. So some of these take a minute to trickle down through the economy. Acutely, people are absolutely going to feel it when they're at the gas station and trying to fill up their car, that those prices continue to rise. But from a broader inflation perspective, people are going to slowly start seeing it on their grocery receipts when they're ordering clothes online, and the fact that, you know, retailers are having to raise their prices. And then from a more indirect level, we're looking at potentially continued higher Federal Reserve and interest rates. And that is something that people are going to see impact the way that they are able to get loans, how much it costs to operate a small business, how much it costs to get a mortgage.
Yeah, can you actually just sort of break that down for us, actually, the issue with interest rates? Is the Federal Reserve now under pressure to keep borrowing costs higher for longer?
Right. We will be looking at a new Federal Reserve chair. Chair Jerome Powell, who had been in the role for many years, his term ended in May. We have Kevin Warsh, an ex-Wall Streeter, who will take the post next week, or he has taken the post. His first meeting will be next week, and Warsh has a reputation for being pretty hawkish on inflation, and one of the things that we will be watching closely is that President Trump has been very vocal about wanting to lower interest rates. And at the same time, we have inflation rates that are really, really high. And what the Federal Reserve and what Kevin Warsh will have to balance is, in order to cut rates that might alleviate some of those challenges in the job market, in kind of this sluggish economy, in order to try to pull those inflation rates down. And if we're kind of seeing the situation where the Fed has a dual mandate between that job market and those inflation goals, and Warsh is really going to have to choose what feels like the most important right now. And based on this inflation number, I would say that might take priority.
Well, Donald Trump is vocal, we'll say, about many issues. And he was asked about the latest inflation figures. And let's just say his response raised some eyebrows. So let's take a listen.
Are you concerned, Mr. President, about the latest inflation number which came out this morning? Could that be a
No, I love it.
for
The numbers were
Republicans
great. You know what I really love? I love the inflation. You know why? The war is over?
Yes.
It's coming down.
I know you can't.
It's going to come down like a rock. And again, we're taking out millions, which I'm just announcing today for the first time. But we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil. Millions of barrels. Every night, we took out oil.
All right, Ali, so Trump says he loves the inflation figures. So how much of a problem could statements like that be for him, considering the fact that inflation rates are actually quite high and the cost of living is quite expensive for many Americans?
Inflation rates are really high, and one of the ways, in addition to just buying power, that Americans are going to feel is that wages are really not keeping up with inflation right now. And I know a lot of Americans have their summer, corporate cycles right now where they're looking at, am I going to get a raise or not? And the fact that paychecks are not necessarily keeping up with the rising cost of goods, we're seeing that show up in major markers of consumer sentiment, where people are feeling more and more pessimistic about the economy, and hearing from the president that it's not something he's worried about. I think that there might be a disconnect.
Yeah, and I mean, tell us just how important, economy is important everywhere in the world, but of course this year is, you've got the midterms later on in the year, and just give us a sense of how much is riding on Trump and the Republicans with regards to the economy.
This is really high stakes. As you mentioned, we have the midterms coming up in November, and there's all eyes on these affordability issues. I live in New York City. The cost of living is exceptionally high, and that happens across the United States, where people are feeling like, I'm struggling to pay my rent, I'm struggling to pay for utilities and groceries and education and childcare, and all of those issues are on the ballot. For whether it's a voting measure, whether it's a candidate, whether it's a political party. And I think that while something like the Federal Reserve or inflation rates can feel really intangible to regular people until it starts showing up on their bills and grocery store receipts, we are at a point with inflation as high as it is, and with interest rates being high and maybe continuing to stay high, that it has these high level economic forces have really trickled down to consumers. And it's something that people are really going to feel in their bank accounts.
Yeah, well, Trump has argued that his policies are actually helping the economy, and but you know, with regards to the cost of living as well, I mean, you mentioned as well, tariffs have also played into this too, right? And trade tensions are, how much of an impact are they actually having on prices being pushed higher? Because there's been a lot of sort of back and forth with regards to tariffs. So can you give us a sense of how they're impacting this inflation rate?
So this trade policy, it has been hard to tell. Because the impact of tariffs is going to have a slightly delayed impact on consumer prices and on inflation. As far as former Fed Chair Jerome Powell said, a lot of that tariff pain has trickled through the economy already, but it is having a sustained impact on something like the general inflation rate. Where alongside things like oil prices, it's keeping that far above the Fed's 2% goal. As far as, that consumer sentiment piece, I think that businesses, big companies, workers, regular people are having sort of this whiplash on not being able to trust the economy and the affordability policies and that are coming out of the White House. And so we see that in other data. We see that companies are less likely to hire right now. We see that people are not moving to different jobs. They're not quitting. They're not, taking the limited vacancies that are there. And that is another indicator that people are just really holding off on bigger financial decisions right now, whether that's buying a home, whether that's, looking for jumping from one job to the next. And so I think that those patterns are absolutely something to watch.
Now, you're saying we should keep an eye, we should watch those elements there that you were saying, but what should we be watching out for over the coming months that could indicate that perhaps inflation is being brought under control?
We have a Federal Reserve meeting next week, and that will be the first from the new chair, Kevin Warsh. And like I mentioned, he will have to decide alongside the rest of the Federal Open Market Committee of, are we going to risk slowing down the job market even more in order to get that inflation under control? And that would look like holding rates or even hiking them. So that is a big piece, is the future of interest rates. And how those relate to inflation is something to watch. And then also, consumer prices. The CPI comes out every month, and understand those are the kind of things that Americans will start to see with their buying power. Is those inflation rates, and then something like wages as well, whether the amount of money that people are taking home is keeping up with the rising cost of living and price of goods.
And of course, we'll be keeping an eye as well on developments across the globe with regards to, of course, the war that is, we'll see what's happening in the Middle East, we'll say. We'll leave it at that. Allie, really great to get your insights. Allie Kelly, economy reporter at Business Insider. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Well, what do you make of the inflation figures and Trump's economic policies? Let us know in the comments. I'm Pablo Folilias. See you again soon.